Welcome, everyone, to the T3 Zoom Café Training the Trainers. And I could not be more delighted than to have Linus Morris with us this morning. I can say without fear of contradiction that Linus is the most experienced and the most educated of anyone on the GTN staff. He's got 60 years of ministry under his belt, and he's got a couple of master's degrees, a couple of doctors of ministry degrees, and he spent 43 years with a ministry called, help me, Linus, uh,
Christian Associates
Christian
International.
Associates, thank you. The last many years as the president of that ministry and joined GTN in 2011. And he has been focused on multiplying leaders for much of that time. And so, welcome, Linus. Great to have you here. Why don't you begin by just share a little bit your journey? It's been a long journey, right? But share with us your journey, and in particular, how the Lord led you into a focus on multiplying leaders, training trainers. Talk to us about that.
Well, one thing you probably don't know is that I could read when I was 1 year old, but I couldn't talk to tell anybody.
Hmm.
So anyway, that's my claim to fame. So
Wow.
the degrees you get two of anything, and they cancel each other out. And so my wife Sharon would tell you that meant nothing to her. And they were obtained just trying to figure out what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to be doing next. So yeah, that's been the journey. And then some of the highlights along the way were a time at L'Abri, studying under Francis Schaeffer, and then studying in England on a special conference that John Stott had started. So I, I went to Regent College. I had other possibilities of graduate school because I wanted to uh, learn under British evangelicals. So I had a dose of American this and that, and guys with different backgrounds here. So that's why Regent. So anyway, I became a Christian in 1964, atheist, agnostic. My marriage was a mess, and I met some guys that invited me to a meeting, and of course they had shared Christ with me. And at the meeting yesterday, actually last night, I got up and I was just journaling a bit about all the people that have mentored me.
Mm.
And I counted, and it's not an exhaustive list. I counted 30 people,
Hmm.
starting with the first two guys that I met with. The one guy, a guy named John Flack, I, I shared the four spiritual laws with me, and then the other guy, Ron Thurman, who had polio, and he taught me how to play handball. Spent time with me, took me into fraternities and sororities, had me share my faith. And I began this journey of, I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, turned down my engineering offers. I went to work with Campus Crusade for Christ. I'd been a Christian for 6 months. Uh, uh, my claim to fame later was that Bill Bright said to me, "You either resign or you'll be the first person in the history of Campus Crusade that I've had to fire." So anyway, I could tell my story from the seasons of ministry, and Campus Crusade was that first season. Then I can share it from the standpoint of bends in the road and bumps in the road, and that was a significant bump, and that led us to start Christian Associates International. I was with a couple other guys that were really great Bible teachers, Hal Lindsey, Bill Counts, and we began this journey of a campus ministry. I worked with students at Northwestern University. In fact, I just pulled out this note that I got from a guy at Northwestern University, just saying, "Hey, want to show my thanks, admiration." Uh, he knew my house burned down. Then he just he just talked about how he first met me. I'd been kicked off the campus at Northwestern University by the Board of Religion, and I was persona non grata on the campus, and so I had to train my replacement. Bill Bright said, "Well, the issue was I didn't have a seminary degree at that time, so." Bill Bright said, "We'll just bring in somebody with a seminary degree," but I had to train him, but I couldn't go on the campus. Our meetings were in the fraternities and sororities. And so I would sit outside, the students would hand me a chair out the window, and I would sit outside in the bushes. And Kenny Lexton was one of the guys that was a new Christian going to our meetings. He was one of the guys that handed me the chairs out the window, and he wrote me out of nowhere after about 40 years and said, "Hey, are you the Linus Morris that we used to hand out chairs?" And anyway, I've been in touch with him ever since. So, I've always spent time with people. Ministry is relational to me. So Campus Crusade days and uh, people that I spent time with, I'm still in contact with. And then I got transferred to UCLA. We started Christian Associates. We had a run from 1969 till about 1980. And then during that time, we began to take basketball teams overseas. Some of the guys that I was working with on the campus, UCLA, pretty good basketball school. And we began to travel and share the gospel at the halftime of the games. And it was a tremendous discipleship opportunity with the guys that went, because we were on mission together. We would have Bible studies regularly, interacting with guys. Uh, yeah, most were Christians. Every once in a while, one wasn't, but then became a Christian on our trip. And then after a decade of basketball ministry in the summer, and then campus ministry and Light and Powerhouse Bible training during the school year, we felt that there was a need for a different kind of church in Europe than what we had seen. Of course, you had all the state churches, traditional churches that were in great decline, and then you had missional churches, but they were all kind of small storefront, meet in a garage, a home. And we began to ask the question, what kind of a church would it take to impact people that have turned away from the church in Europe? And we came up with a plan. And a couple of the guys that I had led to Christ at UCLA in the campus ministry, then they went to our Bible training ministry, and we packed up our families. We moved to Geneva, Switzerland. We planted our first church just across the border in France. I did that for 4 years, came back for 3 on staff of a church that had experienced a lot of growth. I began to write the High Impact Church with the idea of how could we improve on what we did in Geneva. So moved back to Amsterdam, lived there 5 years, started the Crossroads International Church of Amsterdam, the greater Amsterdam area, and both churches are still doing well today, and then we began to multiply churches. So then I came back, and served as the president for the next 25 years. We launched some 50 churches, and those have multiplied since. And so then in 2010, I felt like it was time to hand off the leadership to someone else. We went through a process with our board of directors. Some of the staff were involved, and we chose a successor. And I thought I would stay and then do kind of what I'm doing with GTN, which would be equipping networks of leaders. But after about 6 months, I could tell that the guy that took my place was kind of looking over his shoulder, at my presence, and I just thought, I just need to leave. And then it was a question, Lord, what do I do? It's just one of those moments. I remember praying and saying, Lord, are you done with me? And there've been a few times when I felt like I've really heard the Lord speak. And I heard him say, I'll never be done with you. And then through Roland Niednagel, who had been on our board with Christian Associates, I'd known him since he was a freshman at Wheaton College, and I was my first year of ministry with Campus Crusade at Northwestern University. And he told me about Global Training Network, and I made contact with Paul, and Paul set up a meeting with the board, and then my son-in-law Phil, who's there, and Hud McWilliams, and our wives, we drove to Phoenix, met with the board, and amazingly, they said, "Well, we're not sure about you, but we like the other two guys," and so he he said, I think I remember Bill Bright saying something to you once. What was that all about? So no, I didn't tell him that, or he might have asked, he might have probed, and I might not have made the cut. So anyway, that's my journey. And Phil and I collaborated to design what we call the Divine Expedition, uh, based on initially on the Book of Romans. We have three other phases. The Book of Romans is called "Where Are You in the Book of Romans?" And it's the idea that Romans is an intentionally sequential missional training manual. It's theological, yes, pastoral, yes, but he's apostolic, and so and then in addition to planting churches, which is part of our heart, all these seasons of ministry have uh, have fused together. The evangelism with Campus Crusade, the discipleship, small groups, crazy outreach during the Jesus Movement days, uh, missional with the basketball ministry, then church planting, and then leadership development and multiplication, and then church multiplication. All those are bundled into our training, and Phil and I collaborated to make it interactive uh, and participative, and with the idea of multiplying movements, that um, equipping leaders to multiply movements that reach people for Christ, make disciples, develop leaders, that start small groups that can become reproducing churches. So that's it.
What were some of the early lessons learned, shifts you had to make with Divine Expedition, things that you thought would work that didn't work? Yeah, share with us those earlier days when you're still figuring. I mean, you're still figuring stuff out. I get that, but yeah.
Yeah, Phil can weigh into this too. Initially, we had 6 phases of training. We had been invited to Uganda by a uh, who I think is an outstanding leader, Pastor Peter Kasirivu, and we laid out our 6 phase and how that we wanted to do a phase and then come back and do the same phase, but in a second location, and then do the second phase in the first location, and then just roll that out through all 4 phases. There were all 6 phases, and we probably wouldn't be done with the sixth phase yet. So, and Pastor Kasirivu, I deciphered that and said, that's not a lot. He did it in, kind of your, your non-directive way, just, but we got what he was saying. And so we reduced it to 4 phases, which we then rolled out over what, 3 years, Phil? It took us 3 years to go in and do it. And, we did it in 4 different cities. Uh, so that was one. And I think another one was the identification of people that had the ability, the passion, the vision, the proven ministry, the equity with others to, to travel with us and eventually roll this out after we were there. That's our goal, is that we're equipping and empowering others to be able to multiply this both locally, regionally, nationally, and then internationally across borders. So we had Pastor Kasirivu brought together. How many were there, Phil? 30 guys in that very first training in Kampala, and of those, he had identified 4 that he would you know have travel with us, and we realized, and I think he realized once we started, because he attended the first couple sessions and first couple phases, and that these weren't the right guys.
Hmm.
And so and that's been true, I would say, virtually every place we've gone. We'll start with people. We think in terms of what we call connectors and catalyst. A connector is somebody, like there was a couple that introduced me to Peter Kasirivu, had him come to a leadership conference when I was still with Christian Associates. And then I that couple were the connectors. But Peter Kasirivu is the catalyst. But he also is so engulfed in all that he has started, that he doesn't have the bandwidth to himself really travel with us, digest this, and then begin to multiply it. But he deputized 4 new guys that we thought were the guys, and he thought were the guys. And then these are the guys that traveled with us to these 4 cities, uh, uh, virtually every city 4 times that it took to roll this out for these for these leaders to become what we call master trainers. So those are a couple of the lessons.
Yeah, so key to your multiplication strategy is to find those master trainers. You want everyone that you train to multiply, but you're
Right.
looking for in Australia they say the blokes worth watching, right? And describe what you look for in a master trainer.
I'm going to ask Phil to answer that.
We've shifted a lot. There's way more lessons learned because things didn't work.
Hmm.
And Saul was tall, dark, and handsome and looked the part, but obviously it was David that was God's choice. And we've bumped into that repeatedly now, having done it for a bunch of times. I think the 2 weightiest things are humility and hunger. They have to have an appetite to see God's kingdom advance. And not a lot of guys do. They might have an appetite for evangelism, or they might have an appetite for church planting or whatever. But those that are realize that their nation's not going to change, their tribe's not going to change, nothing's going to change. Those are the guys that they're animals, they're dogs on a bone. And if you can impact them, they'll take it. You just point them in a direction, give them some tools and skills, and they will go crazy for the kingdom. But some of those guys are quite arrogant and, narcissistic. And so that humility piece is critical. They have to know that this isn't about what they accomplish. It's about glorifying God, and so those would be two pretty big things that most of the guys, and Craig, you got to realize we're not looking for master trainers. We're looking for those that could become that.
Good.
I don't know if you watched college football, but this guy from Indiana had the ability to see who he wanted and then develop them. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. Linus is incredibly adept at seeing into who somebody could be. I kind of see who they are and then try to work with them. Linus has an incredible ability to see who they could be if we invested a little time and energy. And it's never Saul. And so.
Linus, share with us a little bit more what you look for. What are the non-negotiables as you're looking for these potential master trainers?
Yeah, I would add, hunger to hunger to humility. I would add heart. That they have a genuine heart for the Lord. They have a heart for the lost. They Jesus talks about not putting new wine in old wineskins, and a lot of what we run up against are kind of the old wineskins, which at one point were new and have produced fruit, and there's still something that's resonating from that. But we're looking for people that won't be tied to that, trying to kind of keep that in place to protect that, that old wineskin that they're so, we have a situation right now, and I won't mention the country, but I could. But raise your hand if you want me to mention the country. So, I that that there's a father son. They're both quite involved in the church that they've started. The church is a good church, and but the father is kind of locked into making that, continuing that, and it's kind of production oriented, and it's attracting people. But the thing that we're looking for is the potential of the son to then multiply something that's not replicating that structure, but has a vision to see lost people come to Christ, and church believers empowered. Again, there's the top down performance oriented, old wineskin, but so we're looking for people that have that capacity, and that has to be coached, uh, because as Phil said, you might have some that have a passion for evangelism, great, but can that be stretched out to not just winning people for Christ? We've got a leader that we're working with right now that's got a great heart for evangelism, and I love that when I see that, because that's at the very core of who I am as a Christian, because that's I know what it is to be lost and having come to Christ. So so at the same time, this leader can he stretch out to equipping others, to empowering others, so that his impact then is not just addition, but it's multiplication. So that, and we're working with him on that, and we're seeing some progress. We've
Hmm.
had to battle and pull and push and but like always affirming, always encouraging, but at the same time, so that at end of his life, he didn't just do this, but he did this.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's what we're looking for. That's our
Linus, a couple of other things you mentioned to me when we were prepping for this call. You said you're looking for someone who has a felt need for help, that they know they need help.
right, right, right.
And people that view Divine Expedition not just as another program to add on to whatever they're doing, but as something that's central or core to their ministry. You want to unpack that a bit for us?
Yeah, we Phil and I were on a Zoom call this last week, and we were having that conversation that it's difficult to start our training in a large church because those large churches are diffused. They have so many, and that's why we haven't tried to roll it out here in the U.S. We've done a little bit training, Phil, especially at the barn community, but churches here, they don't have the bandwidth to do something that involves multiple trainings and stages of development and empowering others. So we found that sometimes it's like we started in Brazil in a small town called Bom Retiro. Connector was a guy that we trained, a friend of mine, Light and Power House, and he'd been working with these people in Brazil and you know connected us, and we started our training. And it's just a little podunk city, and in one of maybe the southernmost state in Brazil. But they've they've got like 30 master trainers that they've raised up, and they've been training regionally. Now we have two hubs. We have southern Brazil, northern Brazil because of them, and then they've started the training in Mozambique, and now they're going to take some of the Mozambicans to Angola. All are Portuguese speaking,
Hmm.
so just this little town, and you think of Jesus starting in Galilee and with fishermen, he isn't looking for, you know, political leaders. He isn't looking for religious leaders. He's just looking for people that are hungry to know God
Amen.
and looking for the Messiah. So
Hmm.
and all of a sudden there he is, and he's not who you would expect him to be. Didn't come from where you thought he would come from, even though he did. So anyway, those are a couple
Great.
thoughts.
Thanks, Linus. I'm going to pause now and see what questions you have. Larry, you raise your hand, so why don't you begin?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the research really supports what Linus and Phil have shared about starting with the right people. Jim Collins, for example, the research that led to his book, Good to Great, that's it. You got to get the right people first. And it's such an inhibitor if you don't. So I just wanted to say that in support of what you guys have shared. I've got to drop off the call, so I'll check it out with the recording. So
Great. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, Jim Collins' picture was you want the right people on the bus and you want them sitting in the right seats on the bus.
that's it.
Great.
And you want to throw everybody else under the bus. Oh wait, no,
Someone
that,
else.
that that's political. That's the political world we live in.
Yeah, yeah. Other questions that you might have for, I mean, I've got more questions and we're not done yet, but other questions that you have for Linus based on what he's talked about thus far. Linus, tell us more about mistakes that you and Phil, and I know it's mainly Phil, but
Exactly.
made along
100%.
the way.
Oh, I don't know, Phil, what comes to your mind?
Our first big mistake was way, way, way too much content
Hmm.
and not enough process time, not enough time
Mm.
for them to. Linus talked about Roland. Roland introduced us to 5 Ds that should come out of our training, which they should either discuss or do or demonstrate or diagram or what
Demonstrate.
that demonstrate.
Yeah,
Um,
I got it.
and hey, there you go.
I always forget
So
one of them.
less content and more process time really launched us significantly forward. Um, and we didn't necessarily have that in sight when we first began. Um, another mistake we made is we went too slowly in the beginning. So there was too much time between our trainings, and they forgot, whatever it was, X number of months ago. So we now try to train in a little bit shorter time spans, either 3 in a year or 4 in a year in one a location. And then that very first training that we did, we went after all of the most important pastors in a whole nation. And so our trainings traveled the full geography of Uganda, and we don't do that anymore. We stay in a city and train them up and let them take it out to the regions. So we've course corrected a lot. We've revised our own trainings more than 40 times in 13 years. So we take the input that came from the national leaders and then apply it to the training. So you gotta hold loosely what you have and be willing to allow it to shift with the different cultures you find yourself in. So.
Hmm. Good. Thanks, Phil. That's great.
We try to uh, include stories, a lot of storytelling to illustrate. We want the concepts that we're presenting to have a story of somebody that experienced that or it led them to this. And so at first they were our stories the first
Hmm.
time around, but as we involved more and more first Africans, Ugandans, then we started adding their stories, and then that it just seemed to fit. So and also practical ministry tools. So it biblically rooted, and we, let's say, go through the Book of Acts, we go through the Book of Romans, we highlight other things biblically, but we are are drawing out practical ministry tools that then we want them to experience. We want them to actually engage in and practice, and it's part of empowerment because we want them then, especially pastors, to empower the people in their churches to be able to do these things. So
What would be a couple examples of kind of that experiential learning that you do in Divine Expedition? Yeah, either one, Phil or Linus.
well, we where we can in a non-closed country, we will actually go out and do evangelism, and Phil and I partner up with somebody ourselves. So maybe we've got like 30 pairs of people that we send out, and based on what they've just been trained in, we're drawing out of Romans. I was lost. We have what we call the one sentence gospel. I was lost. Jesus rescued me, and he can rescue you too. And then we have a way that you lead into that. And then we have, a way we engage with people, and then what we present if people are open. Otherwise, we'll just pray for them. But we go out in twos, and we'll go to a park. We'll go to a neighborhood. We'll go to a shopping center, and where they can't do that, because in a place like Nepal, it's illegal to try to proselyte, but there are things that they come up with that they can invite people into their apartment. They can, just it's exciting to see them adapt what we're doing to what they can do without ending up in prison. So
Great. Josh, you got a question?
Yeah, I just was curious, Linus and Phil, how have you guys kind of handled and processed, discouragement or setbacks throughout the years, whether it be someone you've been pouring into and whether it be a door that seemed open then it closed, or just how you guys have navigated that together and with your team.
Phil.
I've got a couple. We've got a guy that had really leaned into the training, became a trainer, was a really, really good presenter, but it became apparent that he is not a practitioner. He hasn't applied the training to his own life, nor has he passed it on to his family or his church or the community. He's just really good at training and presenting. So that that was really discouraging. And we had to make a course correction in El Salvador, and we still haven't landed on the right guy to move it forward. That was pretty hard. Another discouragement that we're navigating right now is one of the animals, one of our best trainers and
Catalyst.
leaders in a nation. Um, he has embraced a culturally accepted practice that runs counter to biblical mandate. And we're currently trying to navigate that. And that has taken the wind out of my sails probably more than anything. I love this guy. And others are in a position to address this better than I am. I want to get on an airplane and go see him and have a conversation, but it's not my conversation to have because we have catalysts and connectors and other people that are kind of boots on the ground, and they need to have that conversation. So there have been a lot of discouraging things. Linus and I have discouraged one another. We've injured one another and misinterpreted things and had to navigate conflict. You have to be willing to do that. And when we travel, everything is compressed and all the little fractures and flaws get exposed. And one of the parts of our training talks about staying roped together, much like a fishing net. And Linus and I have had to do that through many discouraging moments. And it's really good. And that's been super effective as national leaders have seen us not navigate things very well, and they go, "Oh, what's going on?" And then they see it resolved and reconciled, and it gives them even more confidence to not quit, and to hang in there. So
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
I,
you.
I think part of that.
We've got a couple of questions. Joel, you first.
Okay.
Yes, sorry about that. Linus and Phil, could you describe the process of leadership or master trainer selection? Are the national leaders that you have involved in selecting? How do you go about that process, and what do you how do you implement that?
We've talked a little bit about it, in terms of a connector,
Mhm.
and then we're looking for a catalyst. And a catalyst is somebody that has a sphere of influence, a network of 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 influence and credibility. There's a proven character a thing, and that's some of what Phil was just saying we're dealing with, where all of a sudden something shows up that could derail that whole thrust of what you're doing. It is a character issue, and I, having led an organization for 25 years, I know that no matter how well you vet,
Mm.
that's why we brought HUD McWilliams on board as our human resources. No matter how
Mhm.
well you vet, there are things that show up that you don't know that can derail. And
Mhm.
I can tell stories, but so yeah, and then it's we travel. I think the strength of our training is we travel with people that we're training, and they very quickly we entrust to them the
Mhm.
training that they've been hearing us do. We do that. We begin to do that the second time they've experienced a phase.
Mhm.
They do 50% of the training the third time we do it, and we let them cherry pick. You do what you're most comfortable with. And then the fourth time, which is the point where they become a lead trainer in that phase, then they do the 50% that they didn't do when they were a co-presenter on the
Mhm.
third time. And then when they do that for all four phases, which then again takes time to roll out, then that's when they become a master trainer. So we've stayed with them, and we've been in their homes, and uh, we've laughed together, and we've suffered, bumpy roads and almost getting hijacked in
Mhm.
Uganda and carjacked in Brazil, and so there's just it's like sports, that you're on mission together, and what you experienced bonds you together
Mhm.
in an unforgettable way. Life. So I just feel, I love these people that we've trained with, and I just feel such camaraderie with them, and then to see them flourish. I mean, that's great joy. So
Amen.
There's
Thank you.
something magical about doing 24/7 with people,
Yeah.
right? Because that tends to expose both, when people are under stress and so on. What does that look like? And so your training is designed to have lots of 24/7 with your key master trainers.
right.
And so that helps you learn them, they learn you, and yeah. Kim, you had a question.
Yes, and Linus, you may have already answered my question, but what it was, because we are in and out of country and we're not, there 24/7. I was going to ask, have you put any strategies in place that help you with this vetting process, or, you
Mhm.
know, finding your leaders? Um,
Bill, how would you answer that?
We all bump up against the same thing that we blow in, we do our trainings, we blow out. We try to make them as relationally connected as we can during the time that we're there. But we don't have 2.5 years in Ephesus to really develop
Mhm.
all of this. And
Mhm.
um, it's just hard. We start with a higher level of leader in that we have 4 criterion. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of integrity. They have to have the highest degree of integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have the highest degree of character and integrity. They have to have
Hmm.
Have to have a bit of a proven ministry track record before we engage them, that they're more than just their own little congregation and fiefdom.
Hmm.
They have to be able to have what we call a visionizing capacity. All of them are bumping up against abject poverty, and it's really,
Hmm.
really Western to think about a 1 or a 3 or a 10-year plan. They don't know if they're going to be alive in a year, or are we going to be a country in a year. So if they have those three, they almost never have the fourth one, which is the humility to know that they can't do this God impossible. It's impossible without God. They can't do this big giant vision if they don't start to cross some of these lines that they've arbitrarily drawn. So some of them are cultural, some of them are denominational. Can they cooperate inside a city or a people group or a language group to work together? So that's supposed to be who's in the room. It's not always the case, but the national director who invited us in, we don't go where we're not invited by a national director. We try not to work with missionaries. We try to have a direct relationship with a national director. And they almost never quite get it the first time around, but it doesn't take them long before they go, oh, this is who we need to be working with. And so we get a head start by not just wanting some butts in the seat for a training, but who we're really trying to work with and train. And Craig, I know that you are really adamant on a few select people and going the distance with them, going deep as opposed to, these hundreds or thousands of pastoral conference kind of things. So we're pretty small. We found it's best if we are 30 to 50 leaders, and inside there, we might get 3 or 4 trainers that come out of that. And we've also realized that once they've completed all 4 phases 4 times, they're technically a master trainer, and we celebrate that. But we also realize that they still might not have command of the material. So there's a level 2 master trainer where they actually do fully understand all aspects of all 4 phases. And then
Okay.
there's a level 3 trainer, which is, can they coach other people? Can they navigate conflict? Can they expand this training beyond their natural relationships? There's a spiritual authority component that when a master trainer has command of the material and is able to develop a team, can they actually go to another city and work with leaders? So there's levels of capacity of being a master trainer that we didn't have that insight when we began. We just thought if we do these things 4 times, they'll have it and they'll run with it, and the world will change. Well, hadn't quite happened that smoothly or easily.
Can
So
I add very, very quickly? What we're after is a movement, and movements are highly relational. So
Mm.
once we raise up master trainers, we're not done. We stay connected, and there are different ways to do that. We have WhatsApp groups for all these different places that we're training, and we're developing a certain infrastructure. We have what we call a queen of communication, and we're adding to our over overarching international team. And then you've got Zoom capacity, and I'm constantly sometimes just I'm on this WhatsApp. It's all in Portuguese. I know who they are, so I'll just say, "Hey, great to see you," and let them figure out what I've said in English. So, but just to keep the relational, just hey, we're just so excited about what you guys are doing. So,
Mm. Beautiful.
we've also introduced, and it's just starting to pick up, peer coaching. We get 3 national directors because we're now in 11 countries. We get three national directors to once a month carve out 1 hour to just connect with each other. And I used to try to coach everybody. There's just too many of them. And so now I'm trying to get them to coach one another. And when they cross-pollinate, that's really, really rich. We're gonna, in April, gather all the national directors together in one location, and we just kind of get out of the way and let them start to feed off of each other. We did that 2 years ago. It was very, very profitable. A lot of great encouragement and learning came out of that. We expect the same in April coming up here. So,
Beautiful. Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Uh, Other questions that y'all have for either Linus or Phil? Tell me,
I think
tell us.
I have
Good,
one I'd like
John.
to ask Linus. Is my face still on the screen? Because it's not on my screen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're still looking good, John.
Yeah,
I'm
better than
delivered.
ever.
Handsome, handsome John.
I can't see it. So anyway, I'm delivered from it. Linus, what's the secret to your walk with Jesus for these 60 years of ministry to staying fresh and flourishing?
Thankfulness.
Mm.
Yeah,
I missed that.
just gratitude. I know how lost I was, and I know what that trajectory was leading to, and I know I got intercepted, and have been intercepted along the way by by just God's grace. I mean, they're just, his his promises, his grace. Um, yeah, just I, I I'm just, God gave me what I would look for in a wife when I wasn't looking for it. That Sharon was all those things that I would look for today, and I wasn't looking for those things.
Wow.
And I was actually snuffing those things out until until Jesus, and then I began gradually to realize what I had, and God's gift and grace, and just 6 kids that I'd have to answer to, 17 grandchildren that I'd have to answer to if I veered off, and I start to veer off, and then all of a sudden, I'm, and part of it is just, an organization that has just some great people in it, and that I respect, and that I'm in alignment with in terms of values and mission. And so I don't know, those are just knee jerk comments. So
Thank you, Linus.
E-
Great question,
each one
John.
could be
Go
a
ahead.
chapter in a book, Linus.
I'm working on another manuscript right now. So I'm on chapter 137. So I could write a book on the 30 mentors. I'm just a little piece of all of these influences. You talk about influencers today. That's a big word today. Well, God has had influencers all along the
Great.
way, and I'm just a little bit of all of them. There's not much original here. So
Well, Linus and Phil, thank you for influencing us. And I'm going to share my screen here. I forgot to tell you what we were hoping we would accomplish today. But here it is. I wanted you to be asking yourself, what are some key factors that resulted in such robust multiplication? And then what changes might you make as a result? And so my next screen is thinking about your own journey. Let's end having this conversation. What surprised you from today's Zoom Cafe? What's been most helpful? And what changes might you make in your ministry as a result of what you've heard from Linus and Phil? So, we're not going to go through those questions one by one, but just share what surprised you, what impacted you, and what's a takeaway for your ministry.
I think Linus and Phil, just thanks so much. I just think what you guys shared about working through conflict, working through discouragement, and working together, being sort of just that you're bound together in this, and so we're going to work through and not let discouragement derail, but continue to look into Christ as you navigate those things. Because I just, those things can be so disheartening and be very discouraging. And so I just look at your guys' life, and so I just appreciate that. So it makes me think I need to
Hmm.
reiterate that with the guys I'm working with, that there's going to be bumps. We shouldn't be surprised by them. And what are we doing to link arms even tighter as we do this? So,
Great. Thanks, Josh. Someone else.
I'll go. Thanks, guys, for sharing. It was encouraging on a number of levels, but one is you, Phil, saying, which I think I've heard you say before, you've revised your material 40 times. That's encouraging because it means like you guys are continually growing. You're trying to adapt to best serve the needs of the students. So Jeff Thomas, who's on the screen, he and I trained together in the Amazon, and sometimes we can get easily discouraged when we think, oh, we need to have this all mastered. And you guys are still growing and still learning and still adapting, after doing it for I don't know how many decades. So to me, that's encouraging. The other thing is, some of the mistakes you shared, but also how you're investing in the students relationally, uh, in between trainings, and then even doing stuff with them to bring them along and pour in them, and like doing evangelism with them, or bringing them in to do training. That's helpful. That's something that Jeff and I, still need to grow in.
Great. Thanks, Mark. That's helpful. Someone else.
Well, I really appreciate just your hearts, and you're not in to make a big splash. Your humility, which I feel, is who you guys are, and your intentionality. You're always looking at your material, what works, what doesn't, what can we learn, how can we grow, and I just appreciate that you haven't arrived, and so that's encouragement for us to somebody's been at it longer than us, that okay, just keep at it.
Amen. Thanks, Kim.
I was touched, Linus, when you shared that when you were probably about the age I am now, you asked the Lord, "Are you done with me?"
mhm,
Because that's a thought that goes through my head a lot,
mhm,
frankly, at this,
Mm.
and I hate that thought. I hate it. And just to have, what the Lord said to you, "I'll never be done with you,"
mhm.
and
Yeah, so
you've ended
it's
up with
emotional.
this whole new season. I remember at the first Scottsdale, or whatever is the Catholic place we go to, the first one we went to there, you stood up and you said these words, "I'm all in." And those just impacted me. You must have been, I don't know, close to 80 then. I don't know how old you are. I don't know, but
123.
okay. But, I
I
just
know
want
I
to
don't
be
look
that.
like
And
it, but
If I had a list of 30 guys, you'd probably be on it somewhere.
Well, you're kind.
So
Thank you.
Amen. Thanks, John. Anyone else?
I am so blessed to observe your lives, to
Hmm.
see the partnership of Linus, you with Phil, and working and teaming together. That is just a model for all of us, that we don't do it alone, that we're partnering, strategizing together. And Linus, your continual, the next manuscript you're writing, your journaling, those have been examples for me since I met you. Just to say, those are things that are just basic building blocks in my own spiritual growth. So just thank you for your example, both you and Phil.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Joel.
Last chance.
Yeah, somebody asked a question. Maybe it was John asked Linus, what's his secret? And what I heard Linus answer is basically what he looks for in the multipliers: humility, hunger, and heart. Basically, that sums up how he answered with the gratitude and stuff like that. So he's
Thank you.
modeling what he's looking for in other guys.
Amen. Well, Linus, Phil, thank you. Thank you. This has been really, really rich. And we thank God for you. And thanks for being such great models for the rest of us. So hope to see you next this day after tomorrow for culture discovering our blind spots and hearing from one of our majority world partners, his perspective on that. So same time on Thursday. And in the meantime, the Lord bless each one of you. God
thank
bless
you.
you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you,
You're
everybody.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thanks, Craig.
You're welcome.